So I'm Catherine MacLennan, founder and CEO of the Vilomah Foundation, a registered charity that supports people who have gone through pregnancy loss. So who am I? I'm a mum to 6 babies that were born too soon, and an employee who has had good experiences of returning to work, and an employee who's had bad experiences of returning to work. I've also been an employer and a line manager who has supported pregnancy loss in the workplace. Please be aware that this may be a trigger for some people, and make sure that you look after your own well-being and drop out if you need to. As it's been recorded, you can come back to it at another date. In this session, you'll gain an understanding of how pregnancy loss and pregnancy after loss impacts performance, absence, retention and morale. Good practice around returning to work following pregnancy loss. Good practice around supporting employees who are pregnant after loss. How to communicate effectively and compassionately with someone who has experienced pregnancy loss, and the importance of creating a supportive workplace for all employees. I realise that there may be cost implications for businesses, but hopefully this will be countered by the retention and productivity of employees who have experienced pregnancy after loss or who are pregnant after loss. Vilomah is a Sanskrit word meaning against the natural order, and it is used to describe a parent who has lost a child. The Vilomah Foundation came about following a need that was recognised to offer one-to-one support and group support to those who've experienced pregnancy loss and to those who are pregnant after loss. The Vilomah Foundation offers a safe and supportive environment to those who are bereaved and allows them to explore their journey in a safe and supportive environment. We deliver workplace training on pregnancy loss in the workplace, and we deliver peer support training, and we help with policies and procedures. Whilst the charity is quite new, we've only been going since, as a charity, we were only got charity status in May this year. However, I did run the Pinks and Blues, which is a community interest company, for a number of years. That, however, had to come to a close because we were doing face-to-face work and COVID hit, and we were unable to actually do that. And I wasn't quick enough to pick up on Zoom or other types of Teams in taking it forward. So I had a break and thought, what do I do next? And decided that we would have a name change and become a charity. We're looking at pregnancies before 24 weeks, as it differs from those after 24 weeks and neonatal due to maternity leave. At present, there is no law that states a person who's had a pregnancy loss should have time off work. It is down to each organisation, but there is currently going through Parliament a request to make it law that people who've been through pregnancy loss are given 3 days leave to support them. There's different types of pregnancy loss. So we have recurrent miscarriage. That's when miscarriage happens. It can happen, for example, for 3 in a row. It can happen miscarriage. You have a baby that goes to full term, then you have another miscarriage. So that is different for each person. A chemical pregnancy is where the pregnancy, literally you take a pregnancy test, but then within a few days that pregnancy is no longer showing on a pregnancy test. Ectopic pregnancy, and that this is where the baby grows outside of the womb. So usually it's in the fallopian tube and can have quite a devastating effect on people's fertility due to the nature of pregnancy loss. There's early embryo loss, which is where the sac develops but the baby doesn't. Molar pregnancy, which is where there's an abnormality in the pregnancy and it can actually become a cancerous growth. TFMR, which is termination for medical reasons, are those people who have to make the devastating decision to end their baby's life because of an abnormality that is life-threatening. A late miscarriage is where you have a loss after 14 weeks up to 24 weeks of pregnancy. So miscarriage actually is any time before 24 weeks. Then early miscarriage, which is usually before 12 weeks, and the most common type of pregnancy loss. The emotional impact of pregnancy loss. It's profound and affects individuals and couples in ways that can be difficult to express or even understand. The emotional toll can be complicated by the feelings of shock, guilt, sadness, and even anger. This can lead to poor performance, absence, and resignation. They struggle to balance their professional responsibilities with their need for healing, and it's important that people are given time to actually heal from a pregnancy loss. And we'll talk more about grief and how to support people later on. Along with the emotional impact of pregnancy loss becomes the physical impact of pregnancy loss. So, for example, hormonal changes, these can affect the mood and can fluctuate following pregnancy loss. Fatigue, the whole experience can be physically draining, which leads to fatigue, an overwhelming sense of tiredness. Physical discomfort they may have had to have surgery. This is more common in ectopic pregnancy, molar pregnancy, and miscarriage, where they've had to remove the placenta. All of these can affect workplace performance. We know that when somebody's physically feeling pain, that they're not as alert, they struggle to concentrate. So these things really impact on a person in the workplace. Grief is a powerful personal response to loss, affecting each of us in unique ways. Grief is deeply emotional, ranging from sadness to anger, numbness to confusion, and there is no fixed timeline for it. One of the most important aspects of grief is that it's not a process you get over, but something we integrate into our lives. We often hear about the stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. But these stages aren't linear. People may revisit certain emotions multiple times before finding peace. Pregnancy loss is not just the loss of a baby, it's the loss of the hopes and dreams, the plans for the future suddenly disappear. One of the things that is very common in somebody who's experienced pregnancy loss is the dates that come after, the date of their due date, the date of the 20-week scan, the first birthday, the year that they're supposed to start nursery school, the year that the baby should have been going to infant school, these times can actually re-trigger the feelings of grief. And whilst they lessen with time, they are still present. And so it can hit somebody years after their actual loss. For example, last month or a few months ago, I was texting my niece about her GCSEs results, and it just suddenly hit me that I should have been doing that for my own baby had she survived. So, and these things come out of the blue. We don't sit there with a diary each day saying, this is what would have happened on this day. There's something in us that just knows and feels those feelings of grief and loss. Challenging in the workplace. These need to be addressed so that employees can have a sense of compassionate and of a compassionate and understanding workplace. Pregnancy loss is still considered a taboo subject in many workplaces, as it is in society. Employees often do not feel comfortable discussing their experiences with managers or colleagues because they believe that this may impact on their opportunities for future development, for promotions, for other opportunities that may become available for secondment, for example, because you know that they've been pregnant and they think that it's going to be against them now that they are trying to get pregnant, and this will actually have a negative effect on their chances to develop further. Many places have policies around bereavement, but not specifically for pregnancy loss. And many employees will find that they take sick leave, unpaid leave, or holiday following a loss, rather than actually tell somebody that they've had a loss and negotiate with their manager for some time off on compassionate grounds. This is very much down to the managers. So I had an experience with one manager who was absolutely fantastic. He just said to me, Catherine, when you feel ready, give me a ring and we'll take it from there. I had another manager who involved HR immediately because I'd had 6 losses. I'd had quite a bit of time off. But HR they actually visited me at home and gave me all this spiel on I was costing the organisation too much money, I was having an impact on my colleagues, I was having an impact on the workload for everybody else, which is not what I needed to hear after I'd just lost my son. The expectation on employees is to bounce back. And I think this goes for many types of grief and loss, is that we think people are just going to be okay after a little bit of time and that they'll bounce back and they'll be their normal selves. After a pregnancy loss, you really do change. Your identity changes. And it adds to the unrealistic emotional and physical impact of pregnancy loss when we're expected just to come back as normal, as if nothing's happened. The role for employers. Today, I'd like you to ask yourself the question, how can you create an open culture in your organisation? One of the ways that you can do this is through awareness days. This week is Pregnancy Loss Awareness Week, and many organisations have somebody from a pregnancy loss organisation come to their workplace and offer support for the day and information on the different types of pregnancy loss and support that's available. Implementing supportive policies. To have a policy that's actually about pregnancy loss and things that a person can be entitled to, they should look at things like phased return to work, so that you've got working from home, reduced working hours, building them back up. Whilst this may be difficult for some businesses, actually reducing the hours on a short-term basis means that the long term, you're not having staff off sick, poor performance, and it enables them to come back in slowly and to build back up. Reducing the workload for a person is, don't expect a full working week of work in a few days, hours when on phased return. What can happen is that somebody will come back to work for maybe 2 or 3 mornings a week, but the expectation is that they will do all the work that they would do in a normal working week, which puts pressure on the person to produce work when they're not feeling in the right frame of mind to do that. And again, whilst it's a short-term thing, it has a long-term effect in the employee being able to give their best and perform. Give employees time to get back up to speed. Depending on how long somebody's had off, they may have missed some crucial work developments, and it can be expected that they're back on the ball straight away. But look at their workload, see what's realistic, and help them to give time to get back up to speed, to give them the training that they may need to be back with everybody else, and training for managers so that they are able to fully support those who have experienced pregnancy loss. It's really important that managers do receive training, because just having a policy doesn't mean somebody has the skills to actually be compassionate or know how to support somebody who has experienced pregnancy loss. How you can provide emotional support. First off, signing posts to organisations which can offer one-to-one or group support, such as the Vilomah Foundation. Offer counselling if your workplace has access to it. Peer support networks. Create peer support groups within the organisation where employees can share their journey. Peer support is a really effective use of time to enable people just to sit and talk about how they're feeling, to talk about the difficulties that they may be experiencing back at work, and it's in a confidential setting with people who've been through loss. We can offer training in delivering support groups. Encourage managers and colleagues to be empathetic. Offer support without being intrusive. Later on, we'll talk about the do's and the don'ts, which will be helpful in how to support those who've experienced pregnancy loss. Encourage compassionate communication, and maybe just go away from the workplace, have a coffee. If you're doing return to work interviews, go for a coffee away from the workplace so that the person doesn't feel like everybody's watching them. Develop policies and procedures that support employees experiencing pregnancy loss. A good policy will enable a manager to properly support their employee, and the procedures of how to go about that as well. You could use Baby Loss Awareness Week to profile your policy and workplace practice in supporting those who have experienced pregnancy loss. Now go on to the do's and the don'ts. Do acknowledge the loss. Most people are happy to talk about it. Listen actively. Offer practical help. Could you maybe take them out for a meal or do some baking for them? Offer to take some of their work off them. Use sensitive language. Respect their grieving process. Encourage professional support. Remember important dates and offer long-term support. Baby loss isn't a short-term thing, it is a long-term thing and needs people to remember that the important dates are going to be coming through the first year of the loss and can really impact on the person and the grieving process. Don't minimize the loss. Don't say, well, at least you can get pregnant. Don't say, well, you can try again. Don't offer unsolicited advice. Don't compare experiences. Whilst if you've actually been through a loss and you can offer that to somebody else who's been through a loss, as in peer support, that is fine. But to compare experiences of when you lost your granddad to pregnancy loss doesn't work. Don't force conversation. Don't assume that there's a timeline for grieving. Avoid platitudes and don't make it about you and don't ignore them. Pregnancy after loss in the workplace. Pregnancy after loss is an emotional journey filled with hope and anxiety. Balancing this emotional experience with workplace expectations can be challenging for employees. Raising awareness about the unique challenges faced by employees who are pregnant after loss. Explore how workplaces can provide better support for employees navigating this journey. Some of the commonplace workplace challenges are a fear of disclosure, very similar to talking about pregnancy loss. There's a fear of judgment, potential complications or workplace repercussions. Whilst the support needs to be available, it also needs to be recognised not everybody will want to share the news of their pregnancy. They may want to tell one person so that that person can be there should anything go wrong, or if they're being anxious around things. An increased need for flexibility. In subsequent pregnancies, there may be need for medical checkups, and the need for self-care may conflict with work schedules. Workplace conversations around pregnancy, baby showers, the expectations may trigger or stress the employee. How employees can offer support, who can support employees who are pregnant after loss. Again, a culture of openness, normalising conversations around pregnancy and loss, ensuring the employees feel safe discussing their personal challenges without fear of stigma. Provide flexible working options, offer remote working, flexible hours to accommodate medical appointments, and emotional well-being. Again, provide access to counselling or pregnancy after loss support groups, such as the Vilomah Foundation. Facilitate connections between employees who may experience similar challenges. Again, peer support is really important in pregnancy loss and pregnancy after loss. So where this can be facilitated is really important. Communication strategies for managers. Again, we need to train managers how to approach discussions about pregnancy after loss with sensitivity and empathy. We need to encourage managers to offer support without prying into personal details. A simple "let me know how we can support you" can go a long way. Without making assumptions, managers should check periodically whether the employee needs any accommodations or support. The Vilomah Foundation also offers training and consultancy. We do training for individual line managers or employees, Zoom training or in-person training for a group of employees, of a group of a minimum of 10 people. Training for support facilitators for pregnancy loss and pregnancy after loss. We will train them as we train our pregnancy loss coaches. Consultancy on developing policies and procedures, and all our one-to-one and group support for employees who experience pregnancy loss or are pregnant after loss are fully funded. Today marks the start of Baby Loss Awareness Week, and during the week people will be turning pink and blue to raise awareness. You may see buildings lit up in blue and pink. And there's lots of events, ribbon events around, and services that are by the hospitals. This all culminates on Tuesday the 15th of October with the Wave of Light. At 7 p.m. we invite people to light a candle in memory of babies gone too soon. This is a global wave of light, and at 7 p.m. in each time zone there will be a candle lit for a baby gone too soon. So these are my contact details on our socials. I hope you found this informative, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to respond. Thank you.